unfortunately, I think mostly still now, when you go to medical school, there's a lot of, this is the disease, and this is the drug you use to treat it. That's the way it is. And I started in my, like, right around my late 40s, my early 50s, to feel like, what am I actually doing to help anybody? Like, in those days, we had prescription pads, right? And I would get to the bottom of the prescription pad after writing amoxicillin or Adderall. I'm like, what am I doing to help people? And I just had this profound sense of, I need a new way. And so I started going to a few integrative pediatrics conferences, which really blew my mind. And I started reading a lot of things. And if you're going to read one book, that this is still, you know, to me, the most important thing I've ever read in the medical sciences, was one of Mark Hyman's book. Mark is the father of functional medicine. And he wrote a book, it's at least a dozen years ago, called The Ultra Mind Solution. Now, I want to take a side step for a second and tell you why I got to that book. So in my practice, right, I'm writing prescriptions, I'm feeling frustrated, there has to be more to life than me just writing prescriptions. And during this whole process, I'm seeing more and more depression. I'm seeing more and more anxiety. I'm seeing more and more autism. And you know now, it used to be, you know, 1 in 400, now it's like, you know, 1 in 60, and then they're saying now it's gonna be 1 in 10, and it's crazy. Wow. So depression, anxiety, autism, motor tics, migraine headaches, like the whole gamut of kids in my practice. And we're talking about, I see kids from birth to 21. So this is all happening kids like 8 and above. And then I'm gonna cry. My fraternal twin sister was diagnosed with Alzheimer's at 50. 50. So that happened in the midst of all of this mental health. I'm like, there has to be something going on. I need to learn more about this. Why? And how are we gonna do something about it? So I read Mark's book, The Ultra Mind Solution, and it just blew me away. Blew me away. Mark says in the introduction, depression is not a Prozac deficiency. ADD is not an Adderall deficiency. Unless you get to the root cause of what's happening, you're never going to understand health, and you're never going to repair it. And I'm like, that's great. So I started going to some conferences, and then at one of the integrative pediatrics conferences, people were talking about the integrative health fellowship, integrative medicine fellowship at Annie Wealth program, and I'm like, I don't know. I'm so old. I don't know if I can find the time. I don't know if I can do it. I don't know if they'll want me there. And my dear friend who was a rabbi said, are you kidding me? Apply and see what happens. Well, I got in and I figured out how to pay for it. And it was a lot of work over 2.5 years and 3 residential weeks out in Tucson. Don't feel bad for me. 3 weeks in Tucson over those 2.5 years. And you know, it's extraordinary how much you can learn when you take off your glasses and you open up your ears and you open up your heart and you open up your soul to seeing and learning things in a new way. And so I came back very much energized to talk about Juice Plus again. I came back very much energized to change the way I talk to patients, listen to patients, and manage them. And it's been, I think, the best thing that's ever happened to me, because I really have a sense that I'm connected to people at a much deeper level, and I'm helping them take care of themselves in a much better way. The people that want a prescription for amoxicillin are going to see somebody else in my practice. And absolutely, I use antibiotics and I believe in vaccinations. But when you come to talk to me about ADD, the first thing I do is not hand you a prescription. It's the last thing I do. Because unless you know about what the foods they're eating and the quality of the food and the nutrients in that food and the quality of the sleep and are they exercising and what's the family history and what trauma have they experienced in their life, you can't understand anything that's happening. And so my practice really is about sitting down and learning the story and trying to get a snapshot of all the things that are involved. Because particularly with brain health, right? Like if you're seeing a child with depression and anxiety, if you don't know their story, you don't know anything. If you don't know what happened to them in their life, if you don't know what happened to the mother during the pregnancy, you don't know what happened to them. Because we know that all these changes can start way back in the prenatal period. The genetics, and then the expression of the genetics, what we call the epigenetics. Nutrition impacts that. The mother's exposure to toxins during pregnancy impacts that. The way she was treated during her pregnancy impacts that. Our life is, we are where we are right now, and there are a million influences that got us here. And so my practice now is very much focused on integrative medicine, and I'm very much attracted to helping kids with mental health issues and ADD and autism, because this was my connection to learning about this now, and I feel like it has the greatest impact to really make a difference in their lives, and that's where I am right now. And so I want to talk with you about brain health today, and you're going to help me, which is a good thing. And then by the end we'll talk about really concrete things that you can do. So now it's up on you. So I've already said to you, and you probably, let's see by show of hands. And it doesn't have to be that personal. If you or somebody in your family or somebody that you know and love is currently suffering or has suffered recently from depression or anxiety or an eating disorder or PTSD, raise your hand. Okay, so more than half, right? And I'll raise my hand too. So it's everywhere. And what we're going to learn today, hopefully we'll be able to send that ripple into people in your family and your communities. So we've already talked about this epidemic, which I think you all know about. And I'm wondering if anybody has something that they want to contribute to why you think in 2025, particularly in our country, because it's not in every country, particularly in our country, what are some of the things you think are happening that are contributing to this mental health epidemic that we see in our country?
I'm just texting my husband because it's about you. I don't mean to be rude. Like,
You're not being rude.
this is.
Okay, so raise your hand or shout out. What are any of the things that you think might be related to this mental health epidemic that we're seeing in our country? Food.
The way that the family is dysfunctional sometimes.
Dysfunctional families, yes.
I mean, say it's the stimulus from the outside, the news, the overabundance of information.
So I'm gonna just call that generally stress. So stress, food, I heard the absence of good quality food, stress in the family dynamic. Anything else?
Medication.
Absolutely. I think medication, and we can talk about that a lot, because when you say medication, immediately I go to the overuse of medication instead of getting to what the root cause is, and the impact of medication on our microbiome, on our adrenal system. So absolutely medication. Anything else? Technology. Social media.
As an educator, yes, that's what we're seeing. As an educator, 6 through 12, it's very prevalent today among our students, and a lot of it is the social media.
Like the expectation of having to look or be a certain way, and needing the validation to somehow feel good about ourselves. And unfortunately, what's happened in the absence of validation, we see this expansion of depression, anxiety, even early teen suicide, from mental health issues related to social media use.
Lack of religion.
Thank you. Exactly. And so I 100% agree with you that part of this whole thing with technology, right, is that we've forgotten about the empowerment of seeing somebody face to face, of feeling somebody heart to heart, of having a connection spiritually, either to a higher source, or to nature, or to the earth, or to family, or community. And it's, I think, a huge part of the mental health problems in our country. Absolutely. I'm so glad we're doing this in person, not on Zoom, right?
Yeah.
Right, like this heart to heart
What a
is such an
difference.
important thing. Anything else?
I think when they are on social media or the internet, they know everything that's going on in the world and with everyone else, and that's a lot of pressure
It's a lot of pressure.
It's a lot of stimulation.
and stimulation.
It's a lot of stimulation.
And
Right,
sedentary
information.
lifestyle too,
Right.
more sedentary.
Right, so misinformation on the stress, but I'm also gonna say corollary to what you're saying is that they're not sleeping at night.
It's
because-
nonstop.
Because of social media, right,
Yeah.
and because of all the stimulation. And so the lack of sleep is another big part, a big part of this mental health crisis that we see in our family. Not enough exercise because there's too much time online and playing games and blah, blah,
Yes.
blah. So the lack of exercise, of fresh air, of connection outside, sunlight, all of these things, right?
Gut health.
Absolutely, gut health, right. And the big thing, there's so many things about gut health, but in terms of what we're talking about, the overuse of antibiotics for sure, the tremendous use of pesticides and antibiotics in the food supply. Like if you're eating, conventional chicken, you're not just getting chicken, you're getting every drug and every antibiotic that was put into that chicken to make the largest breast to get the most amount of money. Like you're getting everything. And they're not slaughtered in a loving, compassionate way. All livestock that's being, raised on conventional, feedlots are being slaughtered in horrible ways. And so the stress hormones that get released at the moment of death are in that food that you're eating, right?
The moment of life is just them existing too, the way in which they lived until they get to that
Exactly.
point.
The quality of their life was not, we weren't grazing in green pastures with connection to the earth, exactly. I heard yesterday in a podcast, which I didn't really know the degree of this, but I was listening to Mark Hyman's recent podcast. Apparently, if you go online and look up America, additives in food, there's 3,000 of them.
Wow.
3,000! And those are the only ones that are reported, right? And so we also know that the food additives, like we're talking about food, but we're also talking about not food. The additives that are put in food to improve the mouth quality, to improve the taste, to improve the shelf life, to make you want it so badly that you wake up at 1 o'clock in the morning and drive to a 24-hour 7-Eleven to get yourself a bag of Takis, right? The addictive quality of those chemicals, it's $1 billion business. And it's going into food. It's not food, but it's going into the food. And so I think we hit on most of them. Let's see if there's anything else that I didn't hit on. What are the biggies? Diet, food, pesticides, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so I think I mixed up my things a little bit. Stress, microbiome, sedentary lifestyle, lack of sleep, screen time. Yeah, and one other thing that I didn't mention, but I'm going to go back to now, is some of the other chemicals. So what I did mention is the 3,000 chemicals that are in food. But we also know that in this country, there's someplace upward of 55,000 chemicals that are in our lives, on our planet, in the earth, in your food supply, in your water, in your chemicals, in your cosmetics that you're putting on your skin, in your body wash, in the lotions that you're putting on your baby, in your sunscreens. 55,000 or more. And only a very small fraction of those have been tested to see if they're safe. And even the ones that have been tested have not been tested on 6-month-old babies to see if they're safe. And so there's a tremendous amount of chemicals that are in the environment. And so there are so many places that we can start to say, well, how can I make a difference in the quality of my life? What choices can I make to increase the quality of all of these things that I'm being exposed to give myself the best chance of growing up like that, right? So, let's first talk about food. Now, the fact that you're here, I know that you're interested in food, and that's an amazing thing. And is everybody here on Juice Plus or considering taking Juice Plus? Okay, so we'll talk more about that in general. So, when I got back from one of my conferences before I did my fellowship, I had a really interesting experience. I went to a conference at Cropalo in Western Massachusetts, put on by an organization called the Center for Mind-Body Medicine. James Gordon is the director. And the name of the conference was Mind, Mood, and Food. Like that was 100% where my deep dive was in before my fellowship, Mind, Mood, and Food. And so I went to this conference, Mind, Mood, and Food. And everybody started talking about food as medicine. Food is medicine. And the more I learned, I'm like, oh my God, this is exactly right. I can't get to the bottom of that prescription pad anymore. I need to use food as medicine. And you may know this. And so for 2 years following that conference, I did I guess it's called a blog, I have no idea. on Facebook.
Oh,
I
yeah.
had a food is medicine page, a page.
That was great.
And every week for probably 2 years, maybe more than once a week, I would research a food and look at what are the nutritional benefits of this food. And then I would post a recipe the next day of how you can use this food. And I did like something like 150 different foods. They're still on Facebook some places, as Dr. Sirota, something or other, food is medicine. And so I really started learning about every color in every food is a vibration that impacts the body in a different way. And so when we talk about Eat the Rainbow, on With Juice Plus we talk about Eat the Rainbow, it's not just because aesthetically it's pleasing to the eye, it's because every single color is vibrating in a way that your body recognizes and understands as information to help it function optimally. And so the first thing when we talk about food is medicine and how we're going to fix this mental health crisis is to talk about food. So the first thing I want to say is really about the fruits and veggies. Because I'm pescatarian, I probably eat 5 servings or 6 servings a day, plus I take Juice Plus, so I get another, how many? 30?
Well, I mean, there's 30
some servings a day. And so, and there's a brain food list I'm going to give you all when you leave. We know that there are certain vibrations, certain nutrients, they're called phytonutrients because they're based in plants, that are critical for brain health. And so the biggest ones on my list are the berries, so blueberries, raspberries, blackberries, strawberries. You have to buy organic, but all these things are usually on the top of the dirty dozen, which are the foods that are most likely to have pesticides. You want to buy organic, but you cannot go wrong if you're flooding your body with all those deep reds, blues, and purples. So many of the plant-based nutrients that we know are important not just for brain health, but in reducing cancer and inflammation in the body and in protecting your gut and helping to reduce your risk for Alzheimer's and other kinds of cognitive issues. The blues and the reds and the purples are the key. So blueberries, raspberries, strawberries, if they're organic, right? But also, you know, you can buy purple potatoes, you can buy purple peppers, there's purple
cabbage.
Cabbage, there's purple broccoli, like there's so many. If you go to the store, maybe not a conventional store, but certainly if you go to Whole Foods, when you take a look at the color, let the color guide you. Now it doesn't mean that white cauliflower doesn't also have great products and great natural products that help with detoxifying the body and reducing inflammation, but the blues and the purples and the reds are definitely the first way to go. And I think kids love color, right? And so most kids are interested in eating organic berries, either popping them as a snack or putting them in their bowl of Cheerios in the morning, or having them baked into a healthy kind of a muffin in the morning, or putting it in oatmeal, with some chopped up walnuts and other kinds of brain foods. And so brightly colored fruits and vegetables. So blueberries are a big one in our family. I do a lot of spinach in my family. I make a shake every morning with organic dark cherries, organic blueberries, a big handful of organic spinach. I put in organic oat milk. My husband uses Juice Plus powder. I've gone away from the powder for my own personal reasons with my gut. But blueberries, cherries, spinach, oat milk. I do an organic nut butter, and there's my shake every morning. And I tell you, 6 days a week for the last probably 10 years, and I look forward to it every morning. I never get tired of it. It's so yummy and so delicious. And because I also recognize, look what I'm doing for myself. Look, I'm supporting my health in that process. I yearn for it every morning. And then all other kinds of leafy greens. We know that it's not just spinach, but kale and collards and spring mix and all the dark leafy greens have so many phytonutrients that help the brain. One of the really important ones that a lot of people don't quote unquote know about is called methylfolate, which is an activated form of folic acid. If you take a vitamin that has folic acid and you have one of the many kinds of genetic alterations that make it difficult for your body to activate or methylate that folic acid, you're not getting any of the brain benefit. You're not getting any of the DNA benefit. You're not getting any of the protect your DNA and help make baby benefit. And so when you're eating lots of leafy greens, you're getting activated forms of some of those nutrients that otherwise would not be available to your body, which are really, really important. And, I mean, we could talk about the food for 10 hours and not say enough, but just think about color. I wrote this in, I'm not gonna remember this, so I'm gonna take a look at my paper for a second. Take a look at color. So, the phenols like resveratrol in blueberries and cherries and red wine are essential for your body cells. The flavonoids, which are quercetin and epicatechins in grapes and berries and green tea. The herbs and spices that we typically love, they all have medicinal quality. So turmeric's anti-inflammatory and anti-cancer. Ginger is antioxidant and anti-inflammatory. Reduces nausea and helps with your circulation. Basil is anti-inflammatory and helps with gut spasm. Cilantro reduces oxidative stress. Cinnamon regulates blood sugar and helps with digestion. Garlic is antioxidant, it helps to boost your immunity, it slows down aging. Rosemary specifically boosts your memory, reduces anxiety, reduces oxidative stress. Like literally, almost everything that grows on this planet is not there for fun. It's not there for color. It's there because every single one of them has helped humanity live for millions of years, and we're better now than we've been ever before because of the quality of the things that are growing on the earth. What did I miss? The carotenoids, which are the oranges and reds, lycopene, lupine, in carrots, tomatoes, yellow peppers. Again, every color has a vibration, has an energy that is information that tells your body how to work most optimally. And so, eat the rainbow. The more you eat, the better. And Sharon has this beautiful thing that's out here. These are the things that are in Juice Plus. This is like eating the rainbow. Everything on here is in Juice Plus. And just this morning, I pulled this off the internet, and it looks like what Sharon printed. Like these are all the phytonutrients, and virtually everything on this page is in Juice Plus, which is amazing. All right, so those are the things in food that are in terms of the fruits and veggies, and then there are certainly other things in food that I think are essential in terms of supplying your body with the right information for the healthiest cellular health. And that talks about whether your cell membranes are fluid so that receptors can open and close, and so the proper hormones can connect to those receptors and bring information into the cell. Like if you have a stiff cell membrane, your receptors are not going to receive the right information and go forward with the message. And what makes a stiff cell membrane? Who knows? What makes a stiff cell membrane?
I'm gonna say oxidative stress.
Oxidative stress. What else makes a stiff cell membrane? Think about the talk that you used to give.
Which one?
The one that had the Happy Meal.
Oh, yeah. Preservatives.
Right.
Hydrogenated oils.
And so hydrogenated oils, absolutely. Instead of having beautiful fluid cell membranes, like think about lard. They get stiff, they're not mobile, there's no transfer of information, at least not optimally. And then even in terms of mitochondrial health, all the chemicals and the pesticides, they impact the functioning of your mitochondria. So if you're exposed to mercury, if you're exposed to mold, if you're exposed to arsenic, if you're exposed to pesticides like glyphosate, which is all over the wheat in our country, that's mercury. Your cell membranes aren't working properly, your mitochondria aren't working properly. And if your mitochondria aren't making energy, then your cells are dying from oxidative stress, because you need the energy from your mitochondria to prevent the oxidative stress. And so we need healthy fat. So healthy fats come from fish. So the omega-3s in fish, particularly salmon, have fattier fish, right? Like if someone says, I eat tilapia every week, I'm like, throw it away, honey, right? Like it has no taste because it has no fish oil, and it's all made in a farm, and they're given all kinds of crap, and you don't want to eat tilapia. Please don't eat tilapia. Okay, so healthy fats come from salmon. What else?
Avocado.
Coconut oil. Avocado.
Walnuts.
Non-seed oils.
Non-seed oils, and someone said olive oil, I think. So olive oil, avocado oil. definitely the plant-based omegas, right? You also have good plant-based omegas, the omega-6s from walnuts and flax and chia seeds, thank you.
Flax, yeah.
Flax, chia, and so those are the good oils. You don't want to cook with those because they're a little bit too much. You want some omega-6, but not too much omega-6. But do not have vegetable oil, corn oil, conventional canola oil, palm oil. Those are the things you do not want in your body. They don't help your cell membranes. They're inflammatory. They're not good in any way. So we need healthy fat. So what about? Excuse me a second. What about dairy fat? Do we have an opinion about dairy fat? Do we have an opinion about dairy protein, dairy fat, dairy sugar? Does anybody have an opinion? You do, but you don't eat it maybe. Does anybody eat dairy? Tell me the truth. I'm not gonna.
Well, some.
You eat some. Okay. So I want to talk a little bit about dairy because one thing that I forgot to say in the early part of the talk that I want to talk about now, sidestep, when we're talking about food, we're talking about food with all of the mental health issues that we're talking about. One of the things I forgot to say was about food intolerance. So let me just talk about that now for a moment. So there certainly are people that are having any of these numbers of issues with their health, and not just mental health issues, but gut health, joint health, skin health, where food intolerance can really be a big deal. And so when I see patients that are not doing well, and we're doing a deep dive, taking a dietary history is important, because for a lot of people, dairy is inflammatory. We know that the casein and the whey, particularly the casein, which are the two predominant milk proteins, are very inflammatory. And if that cow was raised on one of those capo farms that we talked about, where they're stressed through their entire life, and there's antibiotics, and there's pesticides, and there's a very high stress level of being killed, right? There's more omega-6, there's more inflammation, because all those situations breed more inflammation in that cow, so the milk is more inflammatory. So if you're going to have milk, please drink organic, grass-fed, because it's less inflammatory. But listen to your body, because maybe your body doesn't do well with the lactose, which is the milk sugar. Listen to your body. Can you get grass-fed, organic, lactose-free milk? Absolutely. But listen to your body. If you're still not doing well, you can have a little organic plant milk, which is fine. So food intolerance can be a big deal, and you have to literally take a listen to your body and try to be a detective. What do I think could potentially be related? But we know that, for example, with people that have constipation, bloating, diarrhea, irritable bowel syndrome, chronic sinus inflammation, chronic ear infections, uncontrolled eczema, uncontrolled asthma, milk is inflammatory. It's the first thing I say, take yourself off of dairy for 6 weeks and see how you feel. It's the most important thing. So think about food intolerance. The other thing that I want to say in this little hiatus is about gluten. Gluten is the protein in wheat. Plenty of people tolerate wheat and they do fine with it, but the patients that I see that are having migraine headaches and anxiety and tic disorders, right? Very often they are intolerant to gluten. And we know that the gluten protein gets broken down and forms a chemical called gliadomorph, which literally locks on the morphine receptors in every cell of your brain, and instead of making you feel happy, makes you feel crappy. Because you have direct stimulation. It also releases more glutamate, which is an inflammatory, excitatory neurotransmitter. And so headaches and anxiety can be directly caused by gluten. We also know, as I said before, that all wheat in this country is finished with a pesticide called glyphosate, which has mercury, and mercury is toxic to the brain. If you're going to eat gluten, buy organic wheat from Italy. We know the wheat's different, it's not genetically modified, it's not laced with glyphosate, but listen to your body, because you may be the kind of person that's intolerant to wheat. I am one of them. On this journey, which is not just about all my patients, it's also about me, I was having headaches all the time. I'm like, oh, it must have been the smoked salmon on my bagel. Oh, it must have been the peanut butter on my bread. Oh, it must have been the... And then one day after having like a 3-day headache after eating fettuccine alfredo, I'm like, oh my God, maybe it's the wheat. read another great book, if you're putting down a list, called Brain by David Perlmutter, who's a neurologist, and like he's studied this for 30 years. And he also is talking about everything that I was talking about, that all of his patients with anxiety, depression, PTSD, motor tics, autism, blah, blah, blah. So many of them got better just taking weed out of their diet. And so I take the weed out of my diet. Guess what happened? Headaches went away. Now I will eat a bagel when I'm in New York because it's the best bagel in the world, but I hardly eat any gluten at all. And now when I make pasta, I buy the best gluten-free pasta, which is called Jovial.
Jovial's the best.
They sell it at Whole Foods. It's the best. I also like Bruno, but I think I like Jovial better. So there are great alternatives for dairy. There are great alternatives for gluten. If you're suffering from any of these brain-related disorders, I would absolutely not just take out the pesticides and all that other stuff. Consider taking out the wheat and the dairy. What we also didn't talk about, because there's so much to say, it's hard to remember it all the other chemicals that we didn't talk about. MSG, nitrates, food coloring, right? Caffeine, all of those chemicals can impact brain health. They're inflammatory, every single one of them. And so if your kid is having a Pop-Tart or Fruit Loops for breakfast, and you're putting Skittles in their lunchbox, right? And then they're having conventional mac and cheese and ice cream with sprinkles on top for dinner, like, don't ask me why if you're kicking that Adderall for ADD, right? Like, let's just talk about what really matters, right? And so we gotta get the chemicals out, we gotta get the food dyes out, we gotta get the brightly colored fruits and veggies in, we have to get the healthy fats in. So we talked about salmon, avocado, nut butters, omegas from chia, and flax, juice plus omega that has a lot of those. And what else do we need? We need protein to make neurotransmitters because we need amino acids to make neurotransmitters, right? So is there a difference in one kind of protein and another kind of protein in terms of how the body does well with? What do you think? Probably rest, right? Like plant protein, I 100% agree with you. Plant protein is more bioavailable and it's a better feed for the essential amino acids that we need to be able to turn over our DNA and make the hormones and the messengers and the neurotransmitters. We all need protein for them. And so try to eat clean protein, which means not a double cheeseburger at McDonald's, right? But if you're going to eat beef, organic, grass-fed, small portions, salmon, wild is better. I think the Norwegian and Scottish salmon is better than regular Atlantic salmon. Try to break organic if you can. Other seafood I think is a good source of protein, but I think you have to be careful with other kinds of animals that are raised in this country on the land, because again, you're still dealing with whatever they put in the feed, whatever the stress that they were exposed to when they were, when they were being raised. You want to just try to get back to the earth as much as you can. So animals that are grass-fed and are in humane environments make for better source for fuel than things that are conventional. What do you want to add to that? You're a nutritionist.
Oh,
So the quality of what we eat. So we're talking about clean protein, healthy fats, we're talking about brightly colored fruits and veggies. Let's talk a little bit about fiber. So fiber we know is critically important for the quality of our gut bacteria, for this microbiome. Does everybody know the word microbiome? So the microbiome is a colony that lives within us. The experts say, and I agree, that there are 10 times as many of them than there are of us. So when you count up the bacteria, the fungus, the virus, all these things that live within us, and when you measure the contribution of their DNA to our DNA, it's 10 times as many of them as there are of us. So we want to treat our microbiome in a healthy way. So what does our microbiome do? It helps to run the digestion of our food and our nutrients. So when the healthy guys are in there, they're digesting, they're extracting healthy nutrients. They also manufacture 70% of our neurotransmitters for our brain health get manufactured in our gut. The best thing you can do for your gut is eat brightly colored fruits and veggies. The fermented vegetables are also great for gut health. Drinking kombucha is great for gut health. The fiber that we get in our plants is great for our gut health. And the worst things for our gut health, if you know, raise your hand or shout it out. What are the worst things for our gut health? Sugar, 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 and you said it, antibiotics. And also, frankly, stress. Like stress knocks out the microbiome. And causes what we call leaky gut, which all those tight connections, which are supposed to keep the bad guys out, start to open up. Stress opens the leaky junctions. Gluten opens up the junctions and makes leaky gut. We want to stay away from, as much as we can, sugar, antibiotics, and stress. Because we need that microbiome to be working perfectly for so many different reasons. And so we're all talking about food. This is all food. Food. Now, in addition to food, we know there are a lot of things that are really important for brain health. We talked about the absence of them, so let's talk about the presence of them. So what else do we need for optimal brain health? We need excellent nutrition. We need excellent restorative sleep, right? So I wrote this down so I wouldn't forget. Probably sleep. So healthy restorative sleep rests our brain, repairs oxidative stress and inflammation, clears toxins through the lymphatic nervous system, consolidates learning and memory. Like these are all things that we have to do to make good sleep. And so the things that we know that help to promote good sleep: eating great during the day, but not late at night. Late night eating is the worst thing for your sleep. Eating wonderful nutrients during the day, but staying away from things that can activate your brain at night, like caffeine, food dye, MSG, things that we talked about. They activate the nervous system. So we want good nutrition. We don't want to eat late at night. We want to keep the chemicals out. We know that cooling the bedroom at night can help with sleep. And so if you keep your house at 75 during the day, cool it to 68 to 70 at night is the best thing for sleep. We also know that getting exposed to early morning light helps to cycle your melatonin release better 12 hours down the road. And so if you have a pet, take your dog out early in the morning, or you go to pray in the morning, go outside very early in the morning. That early morning light can help with your sleep at night. And that's, again, staying away from the junk. The junk disturbs your sleep. Getting off your tablets. Everybody knows this. No screen time for at least an hour. I recommend 2 before bedtime. Because in order for your body to relax and your brain to relax and the melatonin to be released for sleep, light at night disturbs that. And so no light at night. And don't listen to the news. I won't say ever, but minimize your exposure to the things that promote more stress in your life. Be informed, but don't flood your nervous system with things that are happening all the time. Because stress is inflammatory, it disturbs your sleep, it disturbs your microbiome. You're allowed to protect yourself from stress. What else did we say? We said time in nature. Time with a support animal. If you have an animal that really brings you, love and joy and comfort, time with that animal reduces your stress. If you don't have an animal, but you have a stuffed animal, I meant to bring mine, holding a stuffed animal, you literally can absolutely feel your oxytocin going up and your cortisol going down. You really can. And so even having a stuffed animal helps to reduce stress and inflammation in your body. It's true, it really is. Having a spiritual community. Even having a book club, having a religious community, having a purple hat, whoever you're connecting with, supports your spiritual health, your human-to-human connection, your soul health. Having connection to a higher power magnifies that by 1,000,000. So there are so many things that we can do to promote better health in general, particularly brain health. That might be all that I wrote down to say. Let me see if there's anything else I wanted you to know. Oh yeah, doing some yoga, Tai Chi. I forgot to say exercise. You all know about exercise. We recommend exercising, a good 5 days a week. And protecting yourself from all the crap that's out there. That's the most important. Okay, I'm happy to answer questions about this, about your children and your grandchildren, about your husbands, anything you like.
Take advantage. She knows a lot, you guys. Ask some good questions. When you mentioned the cells and the penetration of the cells, what about people say have a little bit of Celtic sea salt in order to get the water into your cells. What do you think of that?
The truth is I don't know what salt does on a specific basis. I know that we have sodium and potassium and calcium channels in all of our cells, and some of those probably are linked to the receptors for hormones and chemical messengers. And so I know that on a genetic test that I do, we sometimes identify genetic abnormalities in the gene that codes for the proteins that allow the sodium, potassium, and calcium into the body, and those can be related to mental health issues. I don't know the direct thing, but I do know in terms of adding salt to your fluid is that it supports your blood pressure, and blood pressure supports oxygen to your brain, and there's nothing more important than blood flow and oxygen to your brain.
Right.
Well, that and reducing inflammation for sure. What I didn't say in particular, that I didn't make a specific connection, but I really want to, is that when we talk about inflammation, I'm not sure if we all know what the word is, but let's talk about it. So inflammation is a process that can happen any place in your body that causes increased blood flow, increased release of chemical mediators that your body is trying to contain or heal something. It causes stress oxidatively, it can cause pain, and it can lead to more disease. And so, for example, if you get a mosquito bite and it gets red and hot and swollen, that's inflammation. If you eat a cheeseburger, the chemicals that are in there go to your brain and they cause inflammation. If you are drinking soda and eating candy, all that sugar is inflammatory to every system of your body, but particularly to your brain. And so when we talk about what can we do to prevent inflammation and to reduce oxidative stress, it's eating the rainbow. It's taking the Juice Plus products, because they help to clear out all the inflammation that our body is generating, often in an attempt to heal itself, but it causes damage. And so we want to give ourselves the greatest power to be able to reduce the inflammation. My sister has Alzheimer's disease. When I started reading about this 15 years ago, there were all these clinical trials going on with all these monoclonal antibodies to try to destroy the amyloid plaque, because they said the amyloid plaque is the reason it's happening.
Yeah. No?
And my brother-in-law and I, looked at each other and did a deep dive, and we said, you know what? The amyloid plaque is part of the body's inflammatory response to the crap that's in the food and also in the environment. The plaque isn't the cause of Alzheimer's. The plaque is the result of the stresses in life that are bringing the cognitive decline. So they showed in study after study after study, billions of dollars, that getting rid of the plaque didn't do anything, because it wasn't looking at the root cause. And then 10 years later, and a remarkable book, are you writing things down, remarkable books? Another remarkable book came out by Dale Bredesen called The End of Alzheimer's. And Dale was also a neurologist studying people for 30-some years. And Dale figured out that there are finite and well-defined situations, chemicals, messengers, whatever, that either drive the brain toward reabsorption or drive the brain toward neuroplasticity, neuroregeneration, and growth and repair. And he identified 31 factors that absolutely either drive the brain to reabsorption or drive the brain toward making new brain, neuroplasticity, and growth. And among the things that reabsorb your brain, my sister had probably half of the things on the list. She had head trauma, she had mercury, she had pesticides. Her whole life she was using, hair dye and cheap cosmetics and all those. She had mold toxicity in her house. She had head trauma 10 years before she got sick. She was working 3 jobs because her husband, God rest his soul, divorced her and wasn't so great about supporting the kids. She was working 3 jobs. She was barely sleeping. She had the sleep deprivation. Her A1C was elevated because she liked to eat, comfort foods. She had literally, just down the list, every single thing. We have MTHFR. She didn't have the Alzheimer gene, you know, the ApoE3, she didn't have the Alzheimer gene, but she had all of these processes that were impacting her. And she's alive 15 years later into a diagnosis of early onset Alzheimer's, because from the very beginning, we took all that stuff out of her life, and she eats now mostly fruits and veggies. She gets salmon twice a week, she gets eggs, I think, twice a week, and that's it. That's what she eats. I should say that's what she said, because she can't eat on her own anymore. And she gets Juice Plus. But she's alive 15 years later, and from her neck down, she's in perfect health. It's just her brain. So, I take a lot of supplements to protect myself from the things that I know took Lori down. I also have an older sister who died of metastatic lung cancer. She was very healthy, but she had a party planning business, and she was working with paints and sprays, and you know, we also know that volatile organic compounds are bad for the body, and I think probably it induced some kind of a mutation for her, and she got cancer. So I'm pescatarian. I eat tons of veggies, I eat tons of fruits, I eat fish probably 5 times a week. I exercise, I take my Juice Plus, I pray. You know, I don't have a dog, but I have stuffed animals. I do whatever I can, and I'm parts of communities that really enrich my heart and my soul. And I would encourage you all to see the things that you can modify in your life and in the lives of your children and your loved ones that can protect you from these epidemic diseases in our culture and give you the best chance of living a rich, healthy life. And I'm really here to answer questions. Feel free to raise your hand.
If someone's going through a very stressful period in life, would you recommend doubling up on Juice Plus, or if so, how many?
I think there's no question that doubling on Juice Plus could help with the cellular things that are going on. And I think the most important thing is not to try to just push through without finding ways to manage the stress in healthy ways. And so that might be more sleep, more exercise, more spiritual connection, talking to somebody that they trust. Like, all those things are really important. And removing from the body the things that are magnifying emotional stress. Like, unfortunately, a lot of people when they're under stress are stress eating. So if you're eating more sugar or more processed foods, more of those things that light up your dopamine response in your body and make you feel good, trying to not do that is more important than doubling your Juice Plus. But if they're going to stress eat, absolutely double your Juice Plus. But all the other things really make a huge difference in helping to. And then things that we didn't talk about, like if you have some lavender, essential oil and you smell lavender, this is going to bring it down. Like things that there's so many things naturally. Lemon balm, drinking chamomile tea, house of flowers. So many plants naturally reduce stress and inflammation. So go to Gary.
Do you have any recommendations for, so nice to see you again, it's been like 8 years, but we had life changes and moves in life. You were my child's pediatrician.
This is Nicole.
When he was born, early on, and I think we're gonna circle back around. But my son has ADHD. There's a lot of this that needs to be cleaned up. It's very hard when your defiant kid is also like ODD tendencies and trying to get, you need to get this done because it's gonna help. But to get this done is like damn near impossible. The kid needs to eat something.
And so, I want to just talk about the cycle though,
yeah,
because everything you're saying is true. And when you're able to get more of that in, the ODD and the ADD
right.
and the OCD is all going to get a little better just based on the food.
No, for sure. And it's hard because when they're at school and they have he's not able to make those choices, so I pack him stuff, and then it's very hard when you have an 8-year-old that go to a party and then he eats stuff. What are you gonna tell him? You can't have cupcake? Very hard, but then we deal with the wrath of it after. Right. I guess Facebook listens, and I got these advertisements for this thing that was called Kids Mood, and I was reading different, so it has saffron, holy basil, and rosemary. So from your knowledge, do you know or recommend to these kids, aside from the food that they're eating, but things like that are supplements that can elevate mood, change, support for kids, like
yes.
additives, spices,
yes.
Yes. Things like that?
I do. I will say that I mostly go toward magnesium which is a mineral that's a key cofactor in the manufacturing of GABA, which is the relaxing neurotransmitter. And even just in terms of physical stress and strain, magnesium is a part of hundreds of chemical reactions in the body. And so most of us are magnesium deficient because we're not eating enough nuts and seeds and leafy greens, and because our soil is depleted. And so getting magnesium, I think, is a really good idea. So if I see anybody with anxiety.
But which one? Citrate has, there's
Exactly,
difference,
it
right?
depends. It depends. If your child has constitution, mag citrate, mag acetate. If it's more anxiety and OCD, mag glycinate is the best one for the brain. But so I usually lean into magnesium, lemon balm, L-theanine, GABA. Those are the ones I generally lean into. And like Ollie has products that have those in them. One of them is called Goodbye Stress Gummies. The other is called Chillax. Chillax has the magnesium plus.
I have to chillax.
Yeah, yeah, it's good. And so those are the ones that I usually recommend. It's more those. I don't specifically use a lot of holy basil and saffron in kids, but I think they're very safe, and I have no objection if you're using it and it's working well. I have no objection to it. And I don't not use it for any good reason other than I just haven't had experience with it. But you're going to text me the name of what you're using. I'm going to look at it. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Oh,
One
okay.
more, sorry, sleep, your magnesium or anything you recommend?
Absolutely. Yeah, we're asking about sleep. So, the first thing I talk about sleep is all the things I already told you about, because a lot of times when kids or adults aren't sleeping, it's because they're not managing their stress well, so their minds are racing at night. They're often working late at night, they're on a screen, they're eating late at night to stay up long enough to get their work done at night, and potentially even having, caffeine to, and so all those things absolutely wreck your sleep. So the first thing I try to recommend is cleaning up what we just call the sleep hygiene, which is all of those things. I absolutely recommend magnesium at night. Nordic Naturals makes a gummy called Calm, which is magnesium glycinate, I think it's glycinate, with L-theanine. Smarty Pants makes a kid's sleep that does not have melatonin, but has lemon balm and L-theanine, I think, and GABA. There are so many. Griebe definitely makes for like the adults magnesium glycinate with all the botanicals in a gummy form, which is wonderful. And so I do recommend those things for sleep. I have no objection to melatonin. I took it for a while and I weaned myself off. I'm using other botanicals now, which I think probably, in terms of information to the body, I'd rather do things that are, not that melatonin's not natural, but it's exogenous, not, whatever. So I'd rather my body's own melatonin be released by natural ways. But I'm a big fan of those, what's called nervines, those botanicals. Lemon balm, passiflora, chamomile, L-theanine, GABA. They all relax and they're great to promote sleep. If your mind's racing at night, you might do well with taking ashwagandha at night, which helps with modulating stress and helps with your cortisol, and it's called an adaptogen. It just helps to modulate stress a little better than taking a Xanax at night.
Can I add one thing?
And you had a question
I
over here?
just wanted to add one thing really quick. It was the sleep about you or your child? You? Okay. Do you work in your bedroom? Do you ever do work in your bed? Okay, because I was gonna say that's a big thing. And I work with people a lot, even with their kids, if they have sleep issues.
Yeah.
Homework, work, anything where you're using the bedroom as another office, like make your bedroom sleep. Like turn it into a spa. Lavender plug-in, like cool it down, just that helps.
And I don't know how much this affects anybody else, but I will say for me, when I moved into the house I'm living in now, I told my husband, absolutely there's not gonna be a TV in the bedroom. No TV in the bedroom, because that's also gonna be a problem with sleep. Someone else? Yeah.
So, I have an 18-year-old granddaughter. She's coming to visit me for a week.
You don't look like you're old enough to have an 18-year-old
That's my
granddaughter.
husband's daughter.
That's
right.
But anyway, she's never been diagnosed in it, but I think she is Asperger's, not autistic. And there's so many children that are autistic or Asperger's. Is there have you found anything that causes one over the other? Is there ways to really truly treat
It's a great question, and I'm gonna answer you in several different ways. The first thing I'm gonna say, this is like probably a whole other talk, but the first thing I'm gonna say is that we have very much in our country gotten used to putting people in boxes and learning how to educate them in that box, how to relate to them in that box, and how to alienate them when they don't feel like they fit in the box. That's our country. And if you happen to be an outlier, it's not good, right? And so Asperger's is not even a term that we use anymore. It used to be the kids that were the highest functioning kids on the spectrum, but had like social and emotional, issues, and didn't have good reciprocity and things like that. We understand that there's really a spectrum. That's why it's called autism spectrum. And there are some people that are not neurotypical. They're what's now called neurodivergent, like they're a little different from the rest of us. And part of what's happening now is a move to try to understand the people that are neurodivergent are not, they're not defective in some way, they don't have to be fixed in some way, that the way they see the world is different, the way they relate to the world is different. And so understanding who they are may be the most important thing to do, is to understand who they are and to learn how to see through their eyes. That's a generous way to say it if your step-granddaughter is functioning well. Now, we also do know metabolically that more kids that are on the spectrum, they have more likely to have brain inflammation, and so we gotta look at their diet and their gut. They're more likely to have MTHFR, which is a genetic thing that impacts the methylation, and that can be treated with methylfolate, methylcobalamin. And so looking at inflammation and looking at some biomarkers can sometimes be useful. And so helping her see that how she sees the world is different than other people, and having her love and accept her difference, I think is the most important thing. I'll tell this to you, and I don't know if it's relevant, but I'll tell this to you. One of the deep dives I did this spring, I think I told you. I watched a movie called Michaela's Voice, which is on Netflix, which is a 30-minute film about a non-speaking adolescent with autism. And she learned how to spell, to communicate all the things that were going on inside of her. And it turns out that she, along with many thousands of other people that are autistic, are extremely bright, extremely communicative, are a bit prophetic, have a very strong spiritual connection. And many of them are also telepathic, and they're communicating in other ways. And so what they are telling us is that we've been sent to teach the rest of you how we really are supposed to be living life, how we're really supposed to be connecting to one another. Like, we're here to teach you. And so see what she has to offer is what I would say. And if you know people that are on the spectrum that are non-speakers, encourage your friends, families to watch Michaela's Voice. Encourage them to watch on YouTube Spellers, the movie. It is extraordinary how many of these people that are featured in the film, and there are apparently 10,000 others that are already using communication boards to speak, are really bright, see the world through their artistic and poetic eyes, and they're contributing extraordinary gifts to the world right now. Even though they're not speaking, they're contributing extraordinary gifts to the world.
What was the YouTube one?
Spellers. Spellers is about an hour and a half. It talks about, I think, 7 or 8. One of them was the valedictorian at Rollins College a few years ago, and I met her and her mom recently, and we have a lot to learn about autism.
Obviously, we could be here all day.
All day.
Dr. Sirota is amazing. She's been my family's pediatrician, and I'm able to just call her from Jacksonville Health, and she'll help me. I know that with Emma, we had her tested with Genomind. So I'm sure you could probably do that, you know, with any of your loved ones also and see whether they have the MTHR gene, whether they have this or that, and that helps direct them nutritionally, right?
Right, it helps to direct the nutrition,
Yeah.
but also, I did a test last week on a 15-year-old who was seeing a psychiatrist, was on Lexapro, she wasn't doing well. The psychiatrist was in the process of weaning her Lexapro to then start Prozac. I'm like, pause. If she has 2 mutations in the serotonin transporter gene, she's not gonna do well on Prozac or Lexapro. Why don't we take a week, do the test, and I'll be able to tell you a roadmap, based on her genetics, what she should be on. And sure enough, she had 2 mutations in the serotonin transporter gene. She was homozygous for MTHFR. She was abnormal BDNF, which is the brain growth factor. There's a lot of things we can offer her, but Prozac is not one of them. You know, like, we have a roadmap based on her genetics. I did forget to say one more thing. I forgot to say that one of the other things that I love to use for myself is lion's mane mushroom. It is absolutely, you know, for cognitive health, for memory, it's one of the best things on the planet. I take it every day. I have for a long time. Lori takes it. It's in Luminate, and so it's another one of
Well,
these
you
things.
guys had, when you entered, you had a little Luminate mocktail. Love it, love it.
And for your kids that are struggling with focus or mood and you don't want to use medication, there's a brand called Fungies that makes lion's mane in a gummy. I will admit to never having tasted it, but it's lion's mane in a gummy. But
What is it,
Lion's
lion's mane,
It's a
lion's mane
mushroom.
Fungies is the name of the brand that makes gummies. I like to use either Om, which is a powder or a capsule, or Host Defense is the capsule that I take, lion's mane. But you can also just take it Illuminate every day of your life.
So I just wanna, bring it back to oxidative stress. Within 28 days of being on Juice Plus, there's 75% less oxidative stress. Oxidative stress affects the brain, so it's really, really important that you do take your Juice Plus, so you can at least get rid of that, and that's measured by lipid peroxide, so it's pretty amazing. That was one of the first studies I ever knew about, and that was 25 years ago on Juice Plus, the product. And there's now 48 studies on Juice Plus, including reducing systemic inflammation in the whole body. So systemic inflammation is connected to disease. So you can calm down all these things that are happening in the body with these products.
Absolutely. The other thing that's really important is that oxidative stress and inflammation affects every single part of your body.
Yeah.
So if it's in your cardiovascular system, you're more likely to have a headache. If it's in your cerebrovascular system, you're more likely to have dementia or Alzheimer's or Parkinson's or something else. If it's affecting your peripheral circulation, you may have claudication down there. You may develop kidney disease that's inflammatory. We know that if your pancreas gets inflamed, you're going to get type 2 diabetes, and when it burns out, you're going to have type 1 diabetes. We know that all cancer is driven by inflammation and oxidative stress, so you cannot give yourself a better gift than reducing oxidative stress and inflammation.
Yes, it's really the foundation. And you can look up on the internet, oxidative stress and this particular disorder, you're gonna find they're correlated. So reducing that oxidative stress, everybody's got some every day. Antioxidants come from fruits and vegetables. That's how you neutralize it. So I'll end with that. And thank you so much, Dr. Sirota. We're gonna do this again at night because there were so many people that wanted to come. And even people that tried to make it here today that couldn't come. I'm so forever thankful that you did this.
I'm grateful, thank you.
We'll be around. We're gonna make smoothies. Julie's gonna make smoothies back there. It's what we have for breakfast or in between. And we'll be here to answer questions. If you have questions, my phone number is in the call. You're gonna get it. That was my